Hello and welcome back to the show for the Everton Nottingham Forest review. Dwight McNeil, or should I say Dwight McMessi, you rock my world. We have won another game away from home. This is just unprecedented form. We've won three in a row away from home and 6 of 8 overall. It's pretty crazy stuff. Obviously, we need as many wins as we can possibly get. This was another one of those games where the opportunity presented itself. We dominated for large portions of the game. Nottingham Forest did not look potent in attack, so if we even conceded a goal, you could consider ourselves stiff. But we stuck fat, we got the clean sheet we asked for, or we asked for on a regular basis. Haven't had too many of those this season, but that was good to see. And then obviously a number of good performances all over the park. There were a couple iffy performances, but I mean, these are the kinds of wins where you forget about the game. Probably 2 days after it happened, you just move forward with your life and worry about the next week. So we're going to dive into the review and then we're going to forget about it. So I think we've got to start with player of the match. There were a number of key contributors. I do think Vitaly Mykolenko deserves an honorable mention because there were a couple times where we needed a vital deflection and Mykolenko was there for it. There were a couple times where attacking-wise, he didn't have the potency that he's had in previous weeks. That sort of threat, going much higher up the pitch. That wasn't really there, but I think there was one in the second half where there was a vital touch and it put Alanga's shot off enough. It made the angle more acute, and obviously it lowered the percentages significantly with regards to whether Alanga was going to score or not. But the player of the game today has got to be James Garner. He has just been, a very consistent performer for this team across the course of the season. I mean, he works extremely hard. He's a very good complementary piece alongside Amadou Onana, who was out in this game. But James Garner, was the pioneer of what we did today, to go with 4 clearances, 3 interceptions, a tackle, and a blocked shot, which was a vital block, may I add. He also had 44 passes. He had 84% from those passes, which was number 1 in the team. He won possession 11 times, which was first for the team. 3 interceptions, first for the team. And in terms of final third entries, 9 of those first in the team. So he was a very key part of us bringing the ball forward, but also was tracking back as well. A very good box-to-box sort of kind of midfielder today. And he's very physical. He's very physical. He got fouled 3 or 4 times today. I can't recall exactly the number, but he's just so smart with it. So cool, so calm, so composed. In a game today where there was a fair bit of hostility, there was a few stoppages here and there. There were tempers flaring moments. James Garner was a really good player, a really calm head amidst a very hostile environment. An environment where in seasons gone by, we would inevitably lose control of the game. He controlled the tempo very well. There were portions of the game where, especially early on in the game, we were getting repeat efforts going into the attacking third. I think there was a 7-minute stretch where Nottingham Forest, 7 to 10 minutes where they just could not clear the ball, and we constantly were feeding back into the box for, other players, attacking players to feast. And I think that was ultimately the sort of byproduct of the goal we scored. I mean, Pickford did send it long, but we were dominating territory as much as we weren't dominating possession. That has been a very common trend of our wins this season, and we saw it on full display again. And I expect, results to be reaped every single time we go about it this way. So, very positive signs in that respect. I think another key thing that we should look at as well is the frontline pairing of Doucouré and Beto. Beto got the start today. DCL would have played 10 in a row, or started 10 in a row for the first time in about 2 or 3 years. However, that did not come to fruition because of a little knock in training. He is made of glass, yes. But Beto looks very off the mark. Did have a couple of opportunities which he somehow butchered. It's like he got the Morpay curse. But that being said, he's a more physical body, which does help, but he just did not look clean today. And I think part of it had to do with that cohesiveness and that connection with Doucouré. There were times where Doucouré, I mean, this guy could not pass the ball whatsoever. He could not hit a barn door with his passes. Every single pass, I don't know what his passing accuracy was, but he might as well have gone to the bench and retrieved a Nottingham Forest shirt from Steve Cooper, because he was basically passing it to them every single time. There were stages where Beto would be running, with the direction of the ball. So going forward, he would be running towards the box. Doucouré would get it in a counter-attacking sort of situation. The problem was Doucouré is very inadequate at dribbling, and he would barely carry the ball forward. So he would just send this long pass forward to absolutely no one. Beto is running away from the play. He's expecting Doucouré to take on the man, carry the ball forward a little bit, and then bring in the cross. A little bit more textbook, a little bit more simplistic. However, with Doucouré, everything is more complicated. So Beto was never on the end of those. That being said, he should have recognized that Doucouré isn't going to carry the ball forward. So he can't be isolating him and leaving him alone as the only guy as the connector in our counterattacks. Because, yeah, you've got to recognize the personnel. Doucouré is incapable. So you've got to be that supporting player that can help escort the ball forward. I do think Branthwaite and Tarkowski, that pairing was impressive today. Obviously, when you come away with a clean sheet, you're always going to look more impressive. But I think those two today, particularly in the air, were very important. Chris Wood, I imagine, isn't too much of a threat at ground level. So more of those aerial sort of hoofball kind of deliveries, that's going to be Nottingham's threat if they send it up to him. And I think Branthwaite and Tarkowski, that matchup was like, we had that sorted from minute one, really. Alanga and Morgan Gibbs-White were the two players that we had to sort of deal with a little bit. That Ashley Young inclusion or selection choice yet again, I mean, I think we're running the risk, but I do think Ashley Young was much, much better today. Probably, I think we look at the personnel of last game and who he was dealing with, and then look at this game. There's a fair disparity, so I think Ashley Young got let off there. But I think there's going to have to be a certain point where you blood Nathan Patterson. That being said, you look at a game like today, you look at the collective, you look at the team, and you say, well, this group of 11 got the job done, and I think Ashley Young actually held his own for large portions of the game. He didn't get yellow carded, which is always a plus in my books. That ensured that he didn't really put a target on his back. Nottingham Forest barely showed enough urgency, and that's always going to equal disaster. That's always going to be the recipe for disaster, especially if you're lacking, like they were missing Awoniyi, or however you pronounce his name, and immediately with that exclusion, they looked way less threatening. So I think Ashley Young, much like the other three in the back four, held their own. Excellent stuff. Forward of the ball, not great, but as we've seen time and time again, it's a moment of brilliance that can separate two equally shit teams. And today, it sort of gave off a similar vibe to Everton-Brentford, where Dwight McNeil scored that stunner of a goal from a very similar spot very early on in the game. And from there on out, it was just a grind to get that 1-0 result. This time around, it looked like we were on the front foot still. They were very prone to conceding a lot of turnovers, very inaccurate with their passes, very loose. We pounced more often than not, and that's why we had those long sequences where we were pressing and getting the ball forward. The end product wasn't there. The wingers still a little bit iffy with McNeil and Harrison. I mean, they did some nice things, but at the same time, lost possession quite a bit. And we didn't really get those crosses, that good end product, into the box because they weren't getting it nearly far enough forward. So obviously we saw Jack Harrison and Dwight McNeil, both get involved for that goal, and we need to see a little bit more of that. I don't think we've seen those crosses by Jack Harrison enough. It went over the top of Beto. If it was a little bit lower, maybe that's on target, and maybe that's the drought broken for Beto, but he also can't hit a barn door. So I think we definitely need DCL back, but it's good that we can play someone that up top can hold their own, hold defenses accountable. I mean, Felipe, I don't know how that guy didn't get sent off because I think he dragged Beto down. And, by Beto keeping him honest, he was already on thin ice. He probably should have gotten a second yellow from that challenge where he brought him down. They were on the break. We were on the break. It should have been undisputed. Best believe Morpay isn't doing that, but I think that's one good thing we can extract. But at the same time, there's definitely a lot of work to do. Beto still looks very raw, and Doucouré might as well fall into that same category because that guy cannot pass. It's always just fluky. It's very fluky with Doucouré, but I mean, he works his ass off, and I think that's what Deitch looks for in every single one of his players. And I think the group he put out there today, though they lack a lot of end product and class and polish, they definitely, grafted for a full 90 minutes. And I think we saw that in the result. We deserved that result. So with that win, obviously we advance forward to the next game. We are 2 points outside the drop zone. We should be on 17 points and above Chelsea, which, I mean, that's always good news. But we do have a fixture before the big Everton-Chelsea game. We've got probably, 3 games in 8 days. So obviously this squad and their health and their match fitness are going to be tested. We've got Everton-Newcastle in a night fixture at home, which probably is a bad thing, but I do think that this team will show up and they will attempt to perform. Newcastle are a very well-drilled side, irrespective of the personnel they put out on the pitch. But it's going to be a big game nonetheless. The stadium is going to be rocking. Anthony Gordon has started for Newcastle, so I imagine there's going to be a fair bit of abuse being hurled over the fence, but I think it's going to be a great game. I do think that we mentally look stronger. So I do think that even despite the lack of Goodison form, I think we can put in a shift and at least be better than the last time we played them. And then obviously the Everton-Chelsea game a few days later, very short turnaround. So there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be put in to get those players that we're missing fit, and ensuring that they're not going to get overwhelmed and actually aggravate further injuries because of the overload of games in such a short space of time. That's going to do it from me. Hope you enjoyed. Hope it was engaging. Make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe as well. We'll be back in a week's time or 5 or so days when that Newcastle game occurs, and obviously a big one. If we can win, odds are we would probably exit the drop zone, but obviously can't count your chickens too early. We'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.